Hey everyone, there's Lindsay.
Hello.
She'll join us in just a second. Alright, I wanted to do a quick live to connect with everyone and talk about perception. Now, perception is... Hey Dylan, thanks for joining, buddy. Perception is very much that engine with which we perceive, or how we interact with the world. The title of this live was we don't see the world, or we don't perceive the world the way that the world is. We never do. The reason that I've said that is because it's a subjective objective relationship. So the world is the object and we see it from the point of view of being the subject. So how does that yeah, cool, how's your day been, buddy? So how does that impact us? Being mindful of that is probably one of the most powerful things that we can have in our arsenal with a whole gamut of things. Hey Gail, thanks for joining. By being mindful of the objective subjective nature of the world or of reality, we are able to put ourselves into a better position to be able to remain non-attached. We are able to put ourselves into a really empowered position when it comes to not taking things personally, or when it comes to give me some other examples, Boo.
When what?
The subjective objective nature of the world, like when we see things when we can recognize that we see things as we are, not as they are, how that empowers us.
Because when we can see things as they are and not as we are, we can respond to them rather than react to them.
Mm-hmm.
When we see
Hey,
things
Shannon.
as a reflection of
Hey,
we
Kim.
are, it's very subjective. And what generally ends up happening is that we respond from a place that's clouded by emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't rationally react to emotion sometimes.
Cool. Yeah, so
I'll be right there and then I'll say more.
It's very much a case of we are probably, whilst we're alive, never really going to be able to get into a position to see things as they are. We will always see them through our filters. That's human nature. Hey Steve, thanks for joining, buddy. Linz is like the great Oz, the voice behind the wall. She certainly is. Yeah, save me.
You want to go home, Dorothy.
Just click your heels together 3 times. There's no place like home.
I got magic.
We've all got magic. That's nothing new.
Yes, we do.
So, in terms of recognizing the power of the subject-object relationship we have with the world, we will probably never be able to truly see the world as it is. That's human nature, okay? But when we can recognize that we're not seeing things as it is, it gives us a really empowered position to be able to remain open to what we're seeing. So instead of being really closed down and just seeing what we're seeing and believing that is the truth, that is the be-all and end-all, that's the reality of it, we're defending our subjective position. Does that make sense? Who's getting what I'm putting down here? Hail and greetings. How's your day been, buddy? So let me see if I can put this into a simpler term. Because we're looking at, alright, there's a bush. That's the object. I'm the subject, so I'm viewing that subjectively. I'm viewing it through my filters. My filters tell me that it's a particular thing. So I'm viewing it through my own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Lindsay may see the same thing, but she's seeing it through her own filters.
I could love it. He could hate it.
Exactly.
I could think that bush is the greatest thing ever based on my experience with other bushes that look like that.
Whereas I could have been stung by a bush like that when I was a kid.
So he hates it because he now
Exactly.
looks at that bush and attaches pain to it. Right?
Yeah, totally. That's exactly where I'm going with this. So it's the same thing with viewing everything in the world. We view the object, but we view it subjectively.
Mm-hmm.
And so our most empowered position is to recognize that we actually are seeing it subjectively, not to strive to see it objectively. We will never be able to fully see something just purely as it is. We would have to have. Okay, that's cool. Let's have this disagreement.
I think that through practices like meditation and breathing and learning to pause and yoga and various disciplines, I think we can very much come to a place where we can sometimes view things objectively. I think that I've experienced a couple of times where something was happening in front of me and my emotions started to kick in and I started to have a subjective reaction to what was occurring, but I was able to pause and I was able to breathe and I was able to remove my emotions and step back and come into my body and connect with my breath and connect with the moment, to where I was then able to observe what was happening objectively and choose my response. It doesn't happen all the time. I'm by no means a Zen master or monk ninja status with this, but I do believe I've done it on a few occasions where I was able to stop my subjective response and remove the filters. That's what meditation and breath work and what we do is we clear the filters, and it's something we have to do on a daily basis. Otherwise they creep back up.
Okay, I buy that. And if I look at it like that, then I can say I've done the same thing at different times in my life. I think the key then to doing that, to being able to remain in a state...
Remain open.
Yeah. To remain in a state of objectivity as we perceive the world is to enter into a state of non-attachment.
Exactly, and it is possible to tap into those things and to practice those things and to bring, and of course that's what we strive for, and reaching that state of constant non-attachment and equanimity is of course enlightenment or freedom from samsara, if you want to go into Buddhism. That's what we're striving for. Is it something many of us will achieve on a daily basis, all day, every day? Probably not. That's taking away from our human experience, I think.
So here's the trick, I guess, when looking at something and you're starting to be triggered by it, instead of feeling that you're being triggered by an object, recognize that it's purely the subjective view of that thing. So if I look at this bush over here and I see the spikes and I start to feel fearful, it's not the bush doing anything to me that's causing fear. It's the fact that I'm viewing it subjectively.
And what his filters are telling him that are creating the fear.
So that's I guess what my point is. Whilst we're in our everyday lives, we're going to have emotional reactions to things. We can work and we can get to a state where we live in non-attachment, which is very empowering, and we do view the world completely objectively.
Hey, Sandy.
But I honestly believe that it's not going to be a 100% of the time thing for us. It's something to strive for, but we will always have things that trigger us along our path. You still disagree? I mean, it's human.
I don't know yet.
It's human nature.
I don't know yet. I think that the deeper we dig. Hi, Tiffany. Hi, Sandy. I think the deeper we dig, and hey, Tabitha, the more work that we do, I think it's very possible to come to a place where the triggers aren't triggers anymore. They're just merely the more you know them, the less they are triggers, right?
This is true, and I came to a place of understanding with this today.
It might be our Wi-Fi. Who knows?
Could be our Wi-Fi. Sorry, guys. We'll probably have better Wi-Fi when we're out in the bush.
Yeah,
we're in Long Beach.
Long Beach for some reason just blocks the Wi-Fi.
But here's the point. Until we get to that stage, and sorry, I was relaying something. So,
oh, look at the flower!
Yeah.
How did you do that? Do that again.
Grateful. There's a new one. It's grateful.
I like seeing the little purple flower go across the screen. That was great.
So today, something that used to trigger me all the time was no trigger for me anymore, because
pretty amazing. I was witness.
I removed myself from the equation and I looked at it, from a place of non-attachment, and I can verify that does happen. It was probably one of the most powerful triggers that I have had in my life. This particular issue.
It was pretty amazing. It was seeing you sit with it and not be triggered.
Yeah.
It's testament to the work. Oh, look at all the love and flowers. Thanks, guys. Woo, flower power.
You guys are rock. So, yes, it is possible, and it can be done. So, what I was saying before, I do backtrack on that. Thank you for calling me on that.
Anytime.
So, here is my overall take on this, though. until you get to the point that you're living in non-attachment to things, pure recognition of the fact that you are viewing the world subjectively is empowering.
And just admitting that our perception, you know, may or may not be skewed at any given point, and that maybe something that's happening in front of us isn't quite happening the way that we think it is. You know, it just even admitting that is just so empowering, because it takes enough steam out of our damned egos to allow a pause, which creates a space for another possible reality to be considered. And when we can do that, you know what happens? We stop being so fucking triggered and so fucking offended all the time. And we realize that, like, oh, look, there he is.
Hi, buddy.
We realize that not everything is the way that we see it. And what happens when we do that is that we allow ourselves to remain open to other people. And instead of letting, you know, the same old perceptions cloud our judgment and keep us cut off from other people, we allow a whole new experience to occur. Because when we allow our old perceptions to constantly run the show, what does it do? What does it do? It keeps us in fear. It keeps us not in trust. It keeps us thinking what? People are out to get us. And all this bullshit that we carry around with us from some traumatic event. And not to diminish the traumatic events that gave us whatever emotional scars. Not to minimize those at all, because we all have them and they're all very real. But the bottom line is that when we're still allowing events from our childhood to dictate how we interact with the world today, that's crap. We're not living in the moment.
Right.
We're not. We're living in the past, and we're letting a 3-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old make our decisions in how we're going to respond with the world today.
Right.
And that's what I think about that.
So if you were 10 years old and you were waiting in the rain for your mum to pick you up, and she forgot to pick you up from school and you got wet, and 20 years later you're still...
Got the walls up and you don't want to trust nobody because of that event?
You're still standing in the rain.
That's not your mom's fault.
That's your choice.
Right.
Yeah. So it's exactly the same thing as what we were saying the other day. You can have your excuses or you can have your results. You can't have both. It's the same thing with your stories, and I am testament to this. You can hang on to your stories, or you can let them go and have some fantastic results.
And live kind of in the moment.
But you can't do both.
Nope.
You can't hang on to the stories that you're telling yourself and have an empowered life.
Nope.
It's not going to happen.
You know, you can be in the moment, and you can be present with people, and you can interact with the world and the people in it as they are, as it's really occurring, or we can interact with it, you know, as we are. And it goes right along with not taking stuff personally. You can't really talk about one without talking about the other.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's a practice.
Not a perfection.
No. And you know, just, I mean, anytime, just think of any interaction that you've had with someone where you felt triggered and you felt an emotional response happening. So somebody does something, right? They do whatever they do. I'm over here. I look at what they do, and it could feel damn well like what they just did is about me. It could feel personal as all hell. It's just my perception. Based on where I'm at any given moment is going to decide how personally I take what they're doing. If I'm grounded and I'm centered and I'm meditating and I'm breathing and I'm here and I'm got my Zen on, I'm going to be able to look at what they're doing and be like, you know what? It's got nothing to do with me. It doesn't matter. It's got nothing to do with me. If I may be scattered that day and I'm ungrounded, or maybe I'm sensitive or emotional, I might take what they did and make it all about me and take it all personally. And that's my perception, that their behavior is based on me. Because if I go through the world with a filter that tells me that everything everybody does is a reflection of me, it's just a false perception.
Yeah.
Created by the ego, created by the wounds that we carry around. And yeah.
I actually just had a thought. You know, I was saying you will never see the world as the world is. You will only ever see it as you are. I still hold to that statement. I still believe that that's true. However, I also believe that with enough work, you become still enough that you're a perfect reflection of the world.
Exactly that.
And so you're still seeing it as you are, but what you're seeing is a reflection of yourself.
Exactly that. And that's where the whole mirroring concept comes in too, is that when we do become still, or we are holding up mirrors for other people and they can't handle that, you know, their perception would tell them that what we're mirroring has nothing to do with them.
Exactly.
It's a whole big twisty thing of stuff that is all.
So we're going to finish up, but I want to ask, who here wants to start working through a program with us? We're going to do them in a series of lives, and I just want some feedback. Who's interested? Who wants to start working through a program with us?
Bueller. Bueller.
It's all a matter of your reality. It's perceptions and misunderstandings. Someone's upset.
It's delayed too. Don't forget it. Like
Yeah. If someone's upset, there's something in ourselves that we should take a
Yep.
look at. Oh, exactly, Tammy. That's perfect.
microcosm and the macrocosm. Exactly that.
Yes, that's exactly right.
You know, anytime something's bothering us or triggering us, it's not about the other person. As much as we want to make it about the other person.
Should we want to shed our lenses, though? Isn't it our lenses and perceptions that make us unique? That's a really good question.
Yes and no, I think, to an extent. I think that's a really philosophical discussion to have that I like.
So what you're referring to, we need to have several things to be here in this world, to experience life. We need a physical body. We need a mind. We need a personality. And we need an ego.
Yeah, us too. We'll have tea and hang out. We'll stop and see you.
You need these things to be alive and to experience the world. It's part
Without an ego, we'd all just be like walking blobs of no personality. There would be no individuality. So I do understand that question, Jen.
Right.
And I like that question.
It's not a straightforward, easy question to answer.
It's like, you know, we can have our perceptions and our lenses. They're great to have, but we need to be master of them.
That's exactly
instead of them
right.
being master of us, essentially.
It's the difference between reaction and response. So both reaction and response can be tailor-made to your personality. You can respond to the world in any number of ways. You can react to the world in any number of ways. Reaction is not your choice. It's automated based on you not having done the work. And response is your choice. So when something subjective, or when something objectively happens, not ego, spirit, consciousness, know your true self. I don't follow. Do you want to explain that, Tammy? I don't quite follow. But see, here's the thing. When something objectively happens, you can react to it, and reactions, things such as anger, resentment, jealousy,
shutting down,
fear, or you can
temper tantrums, stomping away.
Yeah, it's more of an immediate
blame.
Reactions are immediate, or you can choose to respond to it. It's still giving your unique tint to the world, but one is just more empowered.
Right, because we can use our filters and our lenses and our perceptions to formulate a well thought out response to anything that occurs. You know, and it's those things, all of our experiences that give us our unique take on the world. It's just, to me, it's a matter of being. I love her. You're awesome. To me, it's just a matter of being in control of those and not letting them control you, because I think we fall into sort of being a prisoner of our perceptions without even realizing it. Well, right. Ego left unchecked is, you know, that hungry child that always demands to be fed. Unchecked ego is definitely a beast. You know, I like to refer to it as, like, when it's unchecked, it's driving the car, and our true nature is, you know, we're tied up in the back seat or perhaps in the trunk even, and it'll do anything to keep control of the car. That being said, I do think ego serves its purpose in our individuality and our personalities. It needs to be kept on a tight rein, and Ben is making noise back there. Without ego, we'd be like dogs or wolves, and it would just be like constant pack mentality where there is no individuality. And I think what we see in the world today is a whole lot of unhealthy, unbalanced, unchecked ego. But ego does serve its purpose. It gives us, number one, our identity, which isn't a terrible thing, because that's what we're here to do, is have an identity and have a human experience. And I think that it gives us our ability to know our worth and be able to sort of, stand in our own truth. But yes, to transcend the ego.
But here's the thing, right? Ego is a dirty 4-letter word in this day and age, because we have, or dirty 3-letter word.
Well, but 4-letter word.
Yeah. But it's because of our experience with unchecked ego.
Right.
As a race, we have been operating from a place of incredibly unchecked ego.
Right.
Our ego has been running the show as a race for so long now that we don't understand that ego, as opposed to ego, is different. It's like I versus I, self versus the self.
And yeah, the ultimate goal is to transcend that, which is when we can then, move on, and we can transcend this physical realm, and we don't need to have the human experience anymore when we're done with that. And we can go and be free from suffering, or whatever it is that, anybody personally believes that's next. And I think that is when we can transcend that and let that go, which is what we strive for, in the practices that I choose to incorporate in my life, like with Buddhism, is coming to a space of transcending that, but learning to use it as a tool, where it's just another tool for me, and it doesn't dominate and dictate, and.
That's exactly right. It's a tool. You can have a knife in the shed, and it's very sharp, and if your child grabs it, they're going to cut themselves. But the same knife can be really handy at, cutting things that you need to cut. It's the same thing with the ego. I know that's a very rudimental way to put it, but the ego is a tool, and if it's left to its own devices, you're going to be running around
arrogant as, like we see in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Like where we've come from as a race. To go completely beyond all sense of ego is essentially what monks are working to achieve in monastery. There's no individuality. They sleep in exactly the same accommodations. They eat at the same time together. They eat the same food. They wear the same clothes. It's almost coming to that collective consciousness, and it is very much pack mentality.
Exactly that.
I hate to put it that way, but
it is, though.
That's exactly what it comes down to. There's a reason animals like dogs don't have ego. It's because they work from a point of collective consciousness. And yes, that's what we're working to achieve. But while we're working towards that, we still need ego. We just need to learn how to control it.
How to control it while we're having this human existence. And I totally get that too, Tammy. It is learning finally to become one with divine source. I get that, because there's times that I'm like, you know what, I'm ready to be done with this. I don't need to keep doing this wheel. I get it, And Jen, you just made me laugh. She said she was reading an article on ego. Can you make that go to see more? If you have to ask, you probably do.
Right.
We all do. That's that little need that, anything that tells us that we need to be accepted, attention.
But see, Tammy, I'm actually going to call you on this. Thanks for that. I'm actually going to call you on that for a second. I used to work with, I hate to use the word highly enlightened, but that's exactly what he presented to the world. He was a teacher, and he guided me through a lot of my own darkness at the time. His name was Ken, and I believe Ken's still a connection of mine here on Facebook, but I said the same thing to him once, that the purpose of my life is to learn to become one with divine source, because I am an old soul, I'm tired, and I want to get off the wheel. I'm done. And,
yeah, that's probably gonna.
And he came back to me and said, and I didn't understand it at the time, but he said, "That's your separation talking. Go away and reflect on that." And I did. And what I've come to understand now is that everything that I used to crave being, that connection to source, that enlightenment, being out of this human form, that's all there. That's always been there. The connection to source has never gone away. Who I am in truth has never faded, and it has never gone away. I chose to come here to have a human experience, to help others, to indulge, you know, to be here as a person. And to turn around halfway through that experience and say, I'm tired, I want to go home, it's kind of like entering into a marathon, knowing full well what you're getting yourself into, and then halfway through it saying, I can't finish this race, I don't want to, I'm tired.
Sometimes I don't know if we know full well what we're getting ourselves into when we sign up for this.
Yeah, but I mean, of course we do. You know, that's just my take on it.
But I wonder, did we get all the stipulations that were going to occur in the world when we signed up for this? And then we look around and we're like, oh, fuck, what did I get myself into? I'm tired. I'm tired sometimes, you guys. I'm sorry, but I am.
But again,
call me a quitter.
But again, that's our separation talking, because ultimately we are connected to source, to the divine, to grace. That is our birthright. That's who and what we are.
It's true. We just have to remember it.
Just because we separation, for me, we're all connected right now. Not wanting to put a gun to my head. We are all connected. When I say it's your separation talking, I'm talking about duality, your separation from the divine. So you said finally becoming one with divine source, wanting to be off the wheel. If you
because when we're in our human form, we think that we're separate. We fall into the illusion that there is a separation from.
It's the illusion of duality,
which our ego plays a big part of.
Exactly. But the reality is there is no separation. We are all one. We're all connected. People, animals, plants, even things. You know, we are all connected. Anyway.
So we gotta wrap it up though. So it's we can finish that chat unless you want to go on, but I gotta run.
Okay.
So.
All right, no worries. All right, guys, thanks for joining.
Much love.
Sandy, I'll reach out and message you personally about the course. You know, we were talking about the program. You had a few questions there.
Oh, yeah.
And if anybody else wants to chat, if you want to continue the conversation, Tammy, please do. And we will catch up with you soon.
We love to chat on these things. So yeah, please. Yeah. Much love. We'll see you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.